from your refreshments. I would like to introduce to you Robbie Walker from University of Portsmouth, and he's going to talk about every cloud having a silver coloured lining. Thanks very much.
Hi, I'm the security architect at University of Portsmouth, and my role is to effectively help people to formulate the kind of questions that the answers to which will help them make informed decisions about risk. I'm not one of these security professionals who's into stopping people from doing things. It's all about engagement and helping people to, achieve a desirable outcome for everybody. And I noticed, I made a few notes even before the first break this morning. I remember thinking, our profession, for many of us, we have to cover so much territory. Privacy impact assessment, Internet of Things, GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations, Cyber Essentials, PCI DSS, risk, education and awareness and policy, and copyright, IP, intellectual property. And then, of course, there's a whole threat landscape and the technology around that. And even contract law and the prevent duty. I mean, you have to suddenly become au fait with some quite difficult issues very, very quickly, and get answers very, very quickly. Cloud is one of those things, and this little talk effectively is my solution, part of my solution, to quite a difficult problem. Particularly where the expertise might be limited. My experience, I admit, is I'm not a cloud specialist. I don't know all about the various technologies. I'm reasonably aware of the Cloud Security Alliance work, but I find it very difficult and voluminous to get into. Very similar to the privacy impact assessment. I was asked to comment, to do some work in privacy impact assessment. Looked up the Information Commissioner's website. Lots of information, but very difficult to digest into something that we can actually run with. So I was really encouraged by the UCISA initiative to create something small and compact and something useful to go ahead with. So I like that whole idea of small-scale toolkits, which are practical, useful, and that get you most of the way without you being an expert. So what I'm going to talk about is I created this Cloud Questionnaire. Really, it's my attempt is to talk about what it is, how did it come about, what does it do, what is it based on, and how it fits into our existing sort of architecture design, and are there any upsides to it and are there any downsides to it? Because it's a work in progress, it's not perfect. And I'll be including this on the seminar website, so you can run with it, you can have a look at it, read it in a bit more detail. So as a Word document, you can change it, I'm not precious. You can decide not to use it, it's entirely free. Right, but I found that in my experience, it works pretty well. And there are 66 questions in all. I'm not going to go through 66 questions in 20 minutes, there's not really a way. It'll really be a flavour. I'll give you a sort of a whistle-stop tour of some of the sort of key sections. You'll understand by the end how to read it and how to run with it, and how the scoring system operates. All in 20 minutes, which is quite ambitious, I suppose. So it's a tool for assessing the risks associated with externally hosted or cloud services. Okay. And it's fully compliant with the Barbara-Cartland protocol. I don't know if you're aware of the Barbara-Cartland protocol. Basically, the Barbara-Cartland protocol is, I made it up, by the way. It has to be so simple that even Barbara-Cartland could understand it. Now, apologies to any fans of the late great author. She was really quite a creative genius. Found a formula for creating writing that stretched over 50 or more years. Multi-millionaire. She definitely had a unique selling point. But computers just weren't her thing, okay? And I engage with many people who are just not interested in anything I have to say in terms of risk and security. And so I do try to understand where they're coming from and appreciate the issues from their point of view. And it helps me design effective risk mitigations which are appropriate to them. Okay. So how did it all come about? Well, I'm sure some of you were familiar with this, with emails that arrive. And they all, given there are outstanding issues with the privacy statement and IT aspects, a time range for us to meet with name obfuscated to protect the guilty, to go through the requirements. It would be probably helpful if they had these in advance. It's an email I got. Spot the deliberate mistake. Well, we haven't signed a contract yet. We have entered into a verbal agreement to go ahead. Is this okay with everybody? Now, of course, didn't realise that whether or not they've entered into a written contract, the verbal agreement is really the icing on the cake. They really do have a contract. So you get a lot of these 11th hour engagements where people have already made a decision to go with a particular supplier for a particular reason. And they've only ever been tripped up because they've asked for something from our student records, from HR, they've asked for an export of information, and then they've been on the phone to me, and then we've got involved. Now, it's not me to then slam a door on people, it's then for me to start asking the right kind of questions, start helping them to ask the right sort of questions. We generally have a success. I mean, that looks catastrophic because they're already in cahoots with this supplier and they want this information. So we also get maybe a call, you know, we're just about to go live with a mobile app which will radically improve the student experience. There's truly enthusiastic people who are, you know, creating portfolios of CVs online for students to engage with. Fantastic ideas, but they don't have any IT background. They just went to a seminar or a conference somewhere, or a friend from another university phoned up and said, have you tried this app? And then it says, the cloud supplier has asked if we can upload an entire copy of our entire student records database so they can authenticate users. Okay. Fortunately, the registry said no. I said, go and talk to our security architect first. And of course, they need the data today. Right. But they rarely do. When you actually start to peel back the layers, they never need quite the data that they initially want, or sometimes they don't even need it at all. Okay. So, but the actual caller, the originator, wants one of these. It's called a Get-Out-of-Jail-Free card. Don't know if you've ever seen them on a Monopoly board. Now, because really they won't sign off on something that they're not happy about. They realise there's a big problem, and they want to cover themselves. You see, I'm not allowed to give these out anymore. These get-out-of-jail-free cards. I can't go around signing people's risks away. I'm not a risk owner. I never put myself in that position. I always try to find out who the risk owner is in any kind of engagement. So I've come up with this sort of my silver-coloured lining. It's a practical way forward to try and cheer everybody up and to try to not say the no word. So I come back with, yes, okay, we need to provide our Cloud Questionnaire. We need to provide the supplier with our Cloud Questionnaire. Okay. So what does it do? It provides a quick assessment of the risks. And I'm cheating a little bit with risks. This isn't a talk all about the risk assessment. I can give you a nice, in detail talk about risks and threats and impacts and likelihoods, and that's the way many of you'll be familiar with risk registers. I think we've seen one earlier. But it needs to be quick. See, this is obviously, there are people banging on my door to try and get an answer. So it's a quick assessment of risks. It supports informed decision making. Yeah, ultimately that's the prize. It's to present something useful and coherent to the risk owner, the business owner. And more usefully, it starts to open up a dialogue between us, the university, and the supplier. And that's where the real kind of value comes in. I can start to get them to explain what it is they're trying to do, what they're capable of, what their resources are, a whole host of questions. Now, this applies whether it's two blokes in a garage or Google. It doesn't matter. You can send this questionnaire to anyone. And it gives you a risk score. The actual fill the questionnaire, or this is for the supplier to do. I do nothing. I simply send an email with the questionnaire and say, please fill it in as quickly as you possibly can. Give as much detail, and if you have any doubts about the questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. I'll help you. Okay? So you're going to get a risk score against 7 categories. The traditional CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. There's a block of legal questions. There are some service level management questions, questions on policy and standards, and security principles. Not, you don't want to miss the security principles, obviously. So where did it all come from? What's it based on? Some of you may be familiar with these documents, these publications. The Information Commissioner's Guidance on Cloud Computing. The National Cybersecurity Centre produced a 14-point document on cloud security principles, the security principles. And a book I discovered called The No-Nonsense Guide to Legal Issues in Cloud Computing by Charles Oppenheim. I've got permission from the publisher to put this questionnaire together. Now, I was always intrigued that when I first came across cloud computing, when people started to ask me questions about it, I found the best thinking seemed to come from the insurance industry, from the Information Commissioner's Office, from the legal. I don't know if you're ever familiar with Queen Mary University of London's the Cloud Legal Project. They looked into cloud computing, contracts, negotiations. Brilliant piece of work. And I can't remember the name of the chap that wrote the book or led the team, but he created a lot of very interesting, very readable, ultimately he wrote a book about it, but they're still available as downloads, the various papers that they wrote, academic papers on legal issues. Does exactly what it says on the tin, that book. It's worth looking up. It's worth a good look. It has a section or questionnaire on the kind of things you should be thinking about. So this really harvests most of the, I feel a bit guilty really, because I'm just harvesting most of the interesting thinking, changing the wording so that it's more user-friendly, turning them into, changing the tense of the questions and things. So took a little bit of work for me to do. It's all part of our 4-stage program, which ought to work if you, and we're encouraging more of its adoption. And that's basically stage 1 is creating your requirements documentation, thinking about what you want to do with systems and data. And then stage 2, we consider hosting models for the system, the data, and then apply the cloud questionnaire. Now, stage 1 is often skipped, and we go straight to part 2 of stage 2. So we are trying to get people to be more enlightened, and it slowly is changing. Yeah. Then the stage 3. Now, whatever comes back from the cloud questionnaire, sometimes it can be just a go-ahead. Yeah, everything's fine. We get an assessment, as I'll be showing you very quickly later on. But if things start to point out anomalies and difficulties and other risks, particularly around personal data, we kick off a privacy impact assessment, screening and a PIA. Yeah. And we may also produce, I don't know if you've ever come across the factor analysis of information risk. That's a tool, a methodology for surgically looking at particular information risks. Again, that is a lecturette in itself, really. And then ultimately, we create a risk management plan. Okay. Right. So it's not really a risk log or a register, so you won't see the threat, vulnerability, likelihood, impact that you'd normally be familiar with. And I like to think of it as a kind of triage for cloud computing risks. It gets to a good answer quickly. It enables the risk owner to make an informed decision. And if we see any black ice, we can start to engage with further steps and advise people to take up, or factually not advise, insist that they consult with further bodies or in the university, our compliance officers and our governance team to look at prioritising next steps. Again, we will go to the nth degree to help people do what they want, but it has to be done in a safe manner that protects the information that the university has, protect its reputation, and keep us on the right side of the law. So how does it work? Well, again, just to reiterate, it's designed to get to an answer as quickly as possible. It produces a score, which is a kind of numerical figure analogous to risk. We'll see that in a second. Basically, the rule to remember about what you're going to see next is if the response makes you feel warm and fuzzy, because there's a question and then there's a blank for the response. So read the response to the question. If that answer makes you feel warm and fuzzy, you give it a low score. If poor response, it gets a high score. It's a bit like, you know, the quiz game Pointless with Alexander Armstrong and I can't remember the name of the other guy. But low scores are good, high scores are bad. Okay, that's the only little glitch in all this, I think. So we look at, I'm going to just take you through a couple of the categories. That's what it looks like. Okay, class C, confidentiality, and effectively, there you go. If an objective third-party security assessment of the service provider has been recently carried out, how can the university have access to its findings? Well, you can maybe get a good answer to that, 1 or 2. Poor answer, 4 or 5. If you haven't understood the question, you can phone them up and get in touch with them and say, giving you a bit of a second chance here. What do you really mean by this, that, or the other? Okay. You know, I'm not a demon. So there are lots of questions. What are the procedures for end-of-life destruction, retention timescales? Sometimes they get back to us and say, well, actually, the retention timescales are what you tell us they need to be. I thought, okay then, yeah, as long as that's written down somewhere. And then there are integrity questions. You know, what kind of use tracking or activity monitoring is in place? Will a service provider provide a copy of university data in a reasonable time period when requested? Now, there's a trick there. I've used the word reasonable, so they have to get back to me and say, what do you mean by reasonable? Or anyone intelligent would come back to me and say, what do you mean by reasonable? So if they just, well, no, they can simply respond to it, and if I'm happy with the response, I think that they've understood the question, give them a score. Okay, and off we go with availability and legal questions. Again, I'm not going to talk through too many of these questions because I'm more than happy for you to download the entire 66 questions from the UCISA website when it eventually becomes available, and have a look yourself. Some of the questions you might think are a little bit heavy-handed. Some of them may repeat themselves, you know. But we're trying to fine-tune it so that some of the answers they're not redundant. Some of the questions aren't redundant. You know, we're not repeating ourselves. That's one tiny, tiny criticism. But then, of course, I'm not answering the questionnaire, so I'm not bothered. Sorry, not bothered. Is there any spelling? Yeah, it's for the supplier to get back to us. Okay. So, and there's security questions. I'm sure you'll be familiar. You don't need to be, you don't need to be too geeky, so to speak, to be able to kind of read the question and look at the response and make an educated kind of assessment yourself. And so it's kind of you're boiling down impact. In that response, you're boiling down impact and likelihood in your head, thinking a good response is going to minimize your impact and likelihood. So you are doing a risk assessment. It's just very fast track, really. So what does the overall scoring, you add up all the numbers in the columns, and at the end of each section, totalize them, bring them to the top of the questionnaire. And because we've got 15 questions in confidentiality, I've carved the scoring up into 3 chunks, low, medium, and high. That's what they mean. So, for example, in legal, there are 18 questions. So the minimum score you can get is 18. The maximum score you could get would be 90. Okay? And 43 to 65 gives you a medium. And then, so you now, when you've added up those, dead easy, stick the numbers in there, colour code them if you wanted to, you know, red, amber, green. Right away you've got a scoring across all those categories. There isn't a final score. Some people say, oh, have you got a big fun? No. You have to, I think it's probably could concoct one, find an average, but I don't know. Don't think that would be helpful, really. It's nice to see them all spread out like that, because ultimately, you know, one whole lump score might detract from a fairly low score in your availability or integrity or confidentiality, which you wouldn't want to do. Okay. What's the upside? Well, it works best with early engagement, like anything. Early engagement with people is always good. It also works with those, you know, get-out-of-jail-free card server. You can basically put things on ice for a little while, pause things, and gives yourself, get a bit of breathing space, and put bounce that ball back into the supplier's court. So you're not suddenly thinking, oh, you know, people are hassling me for a solution or for an answer to it really is a complex, difficult problem. Okay, it provides openness and transparency. Anyone is free to challenge my scoring, you know. I'm not sensitive about that, you know. They can do what they like and take a good, long, honest look. Suppliers and solutions can be compared. We've never done that, but you know, because of course it's always been, ta-da, we want that tomorrow, you know. So you've never been able to compare with different suppliers. So, but that would be a positive thing. You could actually run this out, and where this has worked, it's been integrated into the purchasing process and the tendering process. So, you know, it's not quite what I'd like it to be, but we haven't really been able to compare solutions, not as well as I'd like. But that's a little bit to work on. The risk owner can make an informed decision. That's my mantra, you know. If they are equipped with the information, then that's my job done, you know. And I can advise them. I can stressfully advise them about not doing certain things. But ultimately, the decision lies with the risk owner, the business owner. Of course, the supplier does most of the work. So if you're, you know, in the driving seat and people want an answer from you as a security bod, you know, you can actually start making the supplier do something, because, you know, sometimes you get these guys, two blokes in a garage, who have got their own little cloud service. They, you know, they need to start to engage and start to ask the questions. Okay. Downside? Yeah, sometimes they don't provide adequate questions or misunderstand the questions. Again, that's not really a downside, because that's where the dialogue begins. That's where you can open up a dialogue. You don't have to. You can take it as it is. And sometimes the questions reveals a showstopper. Again, that's a positive thing in a way, because that's when we have to start to, you know, kind of go to the business owner and say, it's going to take a bit longer because of this question. This is what they've come back with. We need to do a privacy impact assessment. We need to do some further research, further drilling down. But we do also have fast-track methods there too. And that really wraps it up, really, unless you have any questions. You're welcome to, obviously, when this is over, have a look at it. Yeah. Okay. Right. Sure. Okay.